Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to react to this debate between two big YouTubers. One of my favorite YouTubers, Greg Forman of Black Conservative Perspective. He's sitting down with some leftist YouTuber, Jack Cocchiarella, and they're discussing the Supreme Court ruling. This is on Brad Palumbo's channel. And I think it's great that he got these two YouTubers from different sides of the debate to come and discuss this topic. But Greg said that he received some criticism for coming in pretty hot when it came to this debate. They said that he came in quite aggressive. And he said the reason for that is because he knows that these people are not good faith actors. They come in with their deflection. They come in with their tactics that have been given to them, their talking points, their strategies that they have studied, that have been passed down to them from whoever's training them for these debates, or whatever literature they've been reading, whatever propaganda they're studying. And this is all they're about. They're not really here to have an honest discussion. That's why they don't answer questions. What is a woman? Or they will ask you something completely irrelevant as a gotcha, only in an attempt to deflect rather than stick to the topic. You know why? Because they know they have no leg to stand on. This is a losing argument. No, a man cannot become a woman. So let's take a look.
A 2025 New York Times poll found that nearly 7 in 10 Democratic-leaning voters oppose biologically male-born athletes competing in women and girls sports. That's a level of bipartisan consensus you don't see very often. So are Democratic officials on the wrong side of history on this question, and are they going to lose at the Supreme Court? Jack, tell me why I'm wrong to think Democrats are coming down on the wrong side of this question.
Well, because I don't really think Democrats are coming down on it necessarily. You saw the Trump campaign in 2024, and you can say maybe this was a successful message for them or not. I think maybe some of the other topics they were discussing were a little bit more relevant, but spent $37 million talking about transgender athletes. I don't think Kamala Harris spent even a dime in her campaign messaging that this was going to be the central civil rights issue that she cared about the most. But I just think that the rights obsession is what is driving this conversation rather than anything that the left is upholding. Sure, Democrats who feel principled about this issue want to stand in their principles, and I think for any political miscalculation, you could say that is, which I don't believe so. What might be worse is having previously stated that you believe that trans athletes should just be able to play sports as all young people growing up who like to spend time with their friends want to. But what would be much worse for the Democratic Party, in my opinion, as it is still viewed in this moment, fighting back against Trump as a little weak and feckless, would be to retreat from a position you previously held. So are Democrats standing too much in this issue? No, they're responding to a Republican obsession. I think that's how it should be framed. And if it is, I think it's going to be a lot less politically toxic than many pundits would make it out to be.
And of course, all they do is come with the labels. You're obsessed. You're fixated on the genitals of trans athletes and nonsense like that they come up with. Again, this has all been given to them. They are repeating what they have been told to say. In order to demonize people who actually care about the safety of women and girls, who care about the opportunities for women and girls. Apparently that's an obsession.
So you don't think it's a problem that, for example, you have the head of the Democratic Women's Caucus in Congress signing this amicus brief saying that people who are born biologically male should be able to compete in women's sports? Because what I hear from a lot of people is that it's true this doesn't affect a lot of people. There are not a lot of transgender athletes. When Democrats say that, they're correct, but it's a sanity test, Jack, and it's one that a lot of people perceive Democrats to be failing. It's just basic common sense in biology that they're openly defying.
And it has actually affected a lot of women. The one athlete affects multiple women. So if you talk to women, talk to these female athletes, it's affected a lot of them. And that shouldn't be dismissed and ignored just because there's only a few transgender athletes.
I think that there are plenty of rules and regulations. Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, vetoed a bill having to do with greater government intervention in sports in middle school and high school. It just seems like if there's a common sense component to this, it's why is the government wanting to check children's like genitals before they play soccer in 6th grade. It just
That's
seems
just
like
called a physical, Jack. That's a physical.
It just seems like complete overreach.
So, of course, this is another one that they were drumming into people. The obsession with the genitals of trans athletes, children. We know what that's about, trying to paint anybody concerned about women's sports and women competing against men as some sort of, pervert, basically. When the reality is, when you allow men into women's locker rooms, that's a safeguarding issue. That's subjecting young girls to predators. It's leaving them open, unprotected from predators. But you see how they love to flip it? And it is laughable. This is what they're going with, what he's implying there. He knows full well that that isn't required. But of course, he's going to push that lie. And when you hear Greg respond now, he's not going to be mincing his words. He's not going to be playing these games with these people. Because they're coming in with the lies. They're coming in with the innuendos, with the accusations, trying to demonize people who care about women and girls, which is what they claim to be all about. But clearly they are not. And he's going to call out this guy.
So what, any parent can come down from the stands, and if you're like hitting too many threes in the middle of a game, they can just like start to question you. It doesn't really make a lot of sense from a common sense perspective that this is what a political party would be wholly obsessed with spending all their time. It's just government overreach. And I think that's the common sense issue here. The NCAA, individual high schools, individual counties, they can police this as they please, and they have. And it's worked really well, and kids have been able to play sports. I think that's the most common sense thing. Do you want young kids to be able to hang out with their friends or not?
I want to bring in Greg here. Tell us your take on this.
Yeah, so I love when progressives make these fake libertarian arguments as if they actually believe in small government. They don't. In this situation, I mean, let's talk about the Supreme Court and the question that is actually being answered here. Before we get into how ridiculous this dude is when it comes to some of his statements, it is extreme ideology. It is common sense. The Supreme Court is basically answering the question of what is sex and does it matter in sports? The answer to those questions are obvious. Clearly, sex does matter, and sex is defined based off biology, not based off gender ideology, which is clearly what this guy believes in. Because obviously, if there was a definition of sex that essentially included whatever somebody feels, then that would undermine the whole purpose of Title IX.
He came in straight away with the facts. That's how you do it. And I think that refocuses on what we're supposed to be talking about and dismisses their foolishness immediately. Now, this isn't obviously too aggressive. He's coming in with some knowledge and refocusing on what we're supposed to be looking into, which is the Supreme Court and what they're trying to establish. And then you will find out, as Greg asked this guy, Jack, more questions, Jack doesn't even seem to understand what the Supreme Court is trying to establish, or he doesn't want to acknowledge it. And you cannot tell me that Jack, in any way, shape, or form, was a leveled contender in this debate. He lost from the onset. And it's very embarrassing for these people. I don't know how they can come on YouTube and make fools of themselves like this.
Okay? And they'll also undermine the whole purpose of women's sports. So you have to have a clear definition of sex in order to have women's sports in the first place. So it really is about defining what is fair and what is not fair. It's not discrimination. Nobody's picking on trans kids. We're simply just enforcing common sense. Now, I'm not sure how many 16-year-old girls need to see penises in locker rooms. How many women in prisons need to be raped? How many women need to lose gold medals in championships for Jack to understand that this is a big issue? This is not a small issue where, it's just Republicans and conservatives picking on the trans kids. I personally believe that if a 16-year-old girl sees a penis in a locker room, that is a big deal, even if it's just one.
Thank you. How many? Very good question. How many? Even one should never have been put through this. And this has been going on for years. And it's even happened in middle school, across the board. This is what women and girls have been dealing with. And don't even talk about the other implications that come with accepting men as women, such as in prisons. I did a story just a couple of weeks ago. Women have come forward saying they have been RAPE'd because they literally put predators in the women's prison, men who have been convicted and sentenced for crimes against women and children. One of them was against a 6-year-old girl. They put that monster in a prison with women, giving him access to women and giving them special privileges on top of that, moving them to a less secure facility when these are absolute, dangerous, violent predators. Oh no, but the right are obsessed with, trans girls. We don't want them to play sports. This is what they're deflecting with, while real crimes against humanity is happening under our nose. But they want you to be distracted on not letting the little boy play on the team he wants to play on. People aren't falling for it anymore, though. I'm very happy to see that. People are not falling for this anymore. Why? Because they have seen women lose medal after medal, championship after championship, and then even worse, been assaulted.
You have women being sexually assaulted. This is a big deal. This is not something.
Well, all right.
It sounds like
I will say, hang on. I'll give Jack a chance to reply here.
Let me finish.
All right.
And to claim that people who want to protect girls, 16-year-old girls, just want to check penises when all you got to do is check a birth certificate, really shows you how these individuals lack common sense. They are detached from reality. There's a reason why this is an 80-20 issue. Actually, you know what? I don't even believe that. The only 20% that actually agree with this lunacy, they're just saying it because they don't want to be called transphobic. It is a 95-5 issue. Everybody knows that it is unfair for biological boys to compete against biological girls in sports. Everybody knows this, but they can't acknowledge it. Democrats can't acknowledge reality because they do too much pandering to far-left extremists who are a very small minority, but they're very loud. They're very loud in the Democrat Party. So this
Greg, I do need to give Jack a chance.
I do have to jump in here.
If Democrats want to double and triple down on lunacy, if they want to double and triple down on being detached from reality, if they want to double and triple down on 16-year-old girls seeing penises in locker rooms,
so you keep making,
yeah, all right, give Jack a chance to reply because you said a lot of things.
A really compelling case for Pam Bondi to stop blocking the release of the Epstein files if you seem so concerned. Because I just want to make it clear, there have been more sexual misconduct allegations against Donald Trump than there are openly transgender college athletes. So if you're caring about the safety of young girls.
We know that Epstein is another thing they suddenly care about. Under the last administration, they didn't seem to care about it, but now under this administration, they suddenly care about it. What does this have to do with anything that is being discussed right now?
Maybe Donald Trump's administration should go forward with holding the disgusting criminals who were in Jeffrey Epstein's cabal of pedophiles accountable. I just think that if that's the issue that you want to tackle, maybe it's best served. You're focused there. But I don't understand this conversation that you're having about, one, it is policing. That's what you're after. You're after a bigger government. One of the women in this case, her name is Lindsay Hecox. She competed at the club level when she was not allowed on her college's team, right? So do you think that should be policed as well? Do you believe that club level sports, should the president of the United States be getting involved in club level sports? If I'm in a run club, right, and I just like to get a quick jog in the morning, do you think that should be policed? Club level sports.
Women should not be forced. I think that women and girls should
but
not
answer
be
the
forced.
question. Club level sports.
I'm answering the question. You're the one that tried to deflect to the Epstein files as if this has anything to do with it.
I don't think that's a deflection. I think it's a real issue of people's safety.
I'm pretty sure that Midas Touch and your handlers coach you on to do that, right? Oh, deflect to the Epstein files if he actually starts speaking common sense. That's what you leftists do. Has nothing to do with the subject. So yeah, let's talk about what I actually want. I want women to have a choice, okay? I want women to not have to compete against biological males. I want women to not have to be exposed to penises in locker rooms. I want women to have their rights. If you want to stand against women's rights, go for it. Be my guest.
So Jack,
but transgender athletes can have a choice to compete in a third category. They don't want to do that. Nobody is opposed to transgender athletes competing against themselves, competing amongst themselves, or based off their biological sex, which is why, by the way, since we're talking about Supreme Court case, and again, I want to keep this legal, okay, not purely ideological, but legal. They're also talking about whether or not this is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, right? No, it is not, because trans is not its own protected category like race, okay? It's not a special thing. Ultimately, they're not being discriminated against. They can compete based on biological sex, and if given an opportunity, they can compete in co-ed. Again, if women have a choice if they want to compete, or if they want to compete based off, being trans or whatever, they compete on themselves.
All right, Greg.
Absolute facts there. Absolute facts. I think they should just compete according to their biological sex. I'm over this whole third category. A third category that they don't want. So why even push it? Let them compete according to their biological sex. Another thing I want to point out, the whole birth certificate thing, as we know, unfortunately, in certain states, you can change your birth certificate. Federally, you cannot mess with your passport anymore. If you're male, it will say male. It's as simple as that. But states can determine their own laws in regards to birth certificates. Birth certificates can be changed. I think it's like over 40 states. So we can't rely on birth certificates. But what we can rely on is a simple cheek swab. Athletes have to do physicals anyway. They have their checkups. They have to go through these procedures. A cheek swab is inconsequential. Nowhere near as invasive as a genital inspection. The only people who mentioned such a thing were these leftists. At no time did people who care about women's sports and protecting women and girls mention the need for genital inspections, especially when we are well aware that a simple cheek swab is all that is necessary. And it's a shame that we can't rely on birth certificates anymore. It's a shame that they don't want it to be where we can even rely on the English language and basic definitions. So now he's going to bring up the whole name 5 national champions.
I get what you're saying.
I have a quick question, because you seem very passionate about women's sports. Could you name me 5 female national champions over the past year in 5 different sports? You care very deeply about this issue.
Absolutely pathetic. This has nothing to do with whether it's right to take away protection from women and girls, to take away sports opportunities from women and girls. You know who I can name? More than 5 girls who have had opportunities taken away from them across the country and right now in these blue states, who have had national championships taken away from them, who have been subjected to boys being in their locker rooms. What about the names of those girls? They don't care. All they care about is their deflection and their so-called gotcha questions.
That's irrelevant to the actual case.
But you care really deeply about the issue.
Okay, no, Jack. Let me ask you a question that's actually relevant.
So
to the
you
case.
can't.
Caitlin
Clark is not playing anymore, so you can't say that.
What do you define as sex?
Well, you didn't answer my question. I thought you cared very deeply about women's sports. It seems to be motivating a very emotional argument that you're making. There's not a lot of...
Guys, I'm going to reclaim the floor here. I understand your point, Jack. It is a bit of a gotcha, because you don't have to actually be a fan of women's sports or follow it closely to believe it should exist as a separate category.
But that seems to be central to the argument, is you're caring about, it's not even women's sports. You said fairness in competition.
What is sex, Jack? That's central.
I am curious, Jack. Can you give us an answer to the question, what is a woman?
I would really like to first get an answer on any national champion. I did ask the question first. Again, Caitlin Clark, Iowa.
Okay,
I don't think South Carolina won last year.
What is sex? What is sex, Jack? Can you answer the question? What is a woman? Define it.
I don't know why you have to continue to ask just a ridiculous question.
Relevant to the topic, the court case
Greg,
that you don't want to deal with, because you
let me hone in on this.
So he's asked him a gotcha question, and he wouldn't even be able to verify if the answer's correct, because he doesn't know himself, more than likely. But he can't answer the question, what is a woman? Which is 100% relevant to the whole discussion. And that's where we're at with these people. Don't answer their gotcha questions. Always bring it back to the topic at hand. Always bring it back to what we're supposed to be focusing on. Even in court, the lawyers couldn't answer the question. They pretended that there's no definition. Even in the Supreme Court case.
Is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl, or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl, or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth-sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth-sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified, pursuant to their own statute, Lindsay qualifies as a birth-sex male, and she's being excluded categorically from the women's teams as the statute. So we're taking the statute's definitions as we find them, and we don't dispute them. We're just trying to figure out, do they create an equal protection problem?
This is a house built on sand. It is falling down as we speak. And these people, with all of their arrogance, their dismissiveness when it comes to real issues that affect women and girls, they can't even answer a simple question. That's why all they have are these tactics. That's all they have.
I'm not arguing emotion. I'm arguing legal. What
Jack,
is sex?
I do think this is a question Democrats have to have an answer for. And when it comes to, is it policing? We have Title IX that says women and female sports must exist as a separate concept. It's legally mandated at colleges. So then you do have to have a legal definition and dispute over what is a woman and what is female. So what is your answer to that question? What is a woman?
I think that that's something that should be left up to these individual institutions. I think that, and not in terms of some broader definition. If we want to, pull up Merriam-Webster, we're more than happy to go for it. But I'm just, again, surprised that conservatives continue to come back to this question as if it's the most important thing for the federal government to be policing.
But
No,
it
we're not
already
talking about
does
federal-
through Title
listen,
IX.
We're talking about these are states.
I'm talking about this very specific.
No, let me finish. These are states saying that, hey, we have the right to protect women in sports. Now, if sex has no legal meaning, which is what you're saying, then what is the purpose of women's sports? If it doesn't have a meaning, if it's just whoever can decide whatever, then what's the point?
I think that ultimately the way that this conversation began, and I know we've strayed from it a little bit, and I still haven't gotten my answer. I'd love to know those
No,
five
we haven't.
champions
We're
that you're
talking
so.
about the actual case. You're
Let me
trying to
finish.
stray away from it with Epstein.
Let Jack
Kyle,
respond, Greg. Let him
The
respond.
I'm trying to
question,
get an answer to what is sex, and if it has no meaning to
The
you,
question
then what
was
is
one
the point of women's sports?
about the
Tell us.
political implications for this issue. And what I see here is the political implications are the right wing is obsessed with young girls, whether that be with Jeffrey Epstein and hanging out as him and Donald Trump did, or talking about them in this abstract way when they're not actually paying attention to women's sports. So to answer the question that actually began this conversation, to put a little bow on it, and of course, I'm not the host of this, so we can continue the conversation, but I don't think that this is a losing issue if Republicans are making these emotional arguments.
What's emotional about asking you what is sex? That's central to the Supreme Court case. I don't know if you understood the question or the case. Did you actually read about the case and what's going on in the Supreme Court and the question that they're answering? In fact, tell us, what is the question that the Supreme Court is trying to answer?
Again, I just don't understand why conservatives find this is the main.
Greg, sorry, I'm going to reclaim this here.
You don't even understand the topic.
So there you have it. He has nothing, absolutely nothing, other than his name 5 national champions in women's sports and Epstein. Can't even answer the basic question of what they're supposed to be discussing. That's why he comes there with an intention to do nothing but deflect. Don't play their games. Don't waste your time. Science isn't on their side. The law isn't on their side. Morality isn't on their side. And common sense certainly isn't on their side. They know it and we know it. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.